A few months ago, Russia released this video showing off all their new drone innovations, and a viewer, Brian here, said, quote, absolutely certain Ukraine knows where this is within a couple days, end quote. 5, to be specific, or at least 5 days for the Molfar group to find the exact location and publish a paper on how they did it. Turns out the facility is right here, just west of Moscow. I don't know for sure, but it's probably been the target of Ukrainian drone strikes since this report came out. So today we're talking with James Westlake, the head of Molfar's UK office. He walked through this open source investigation and how a water bottle and a few trees in the background gave away this Russian location. You can learn more about Molfar and the Molfar Institute in the description below. And with that, let's get to the conversation. All right, James, thank you so much for taking the time, sir. We're looking forward to hearing about this investigation because this was pretty wild.
Hi, Preston. Great. Thanks. Yeah, and great to be on the show too. Big fan of the channel and big fan of your analysis on everything Ukraine as well.
I appreciate that, sir. So one question, I know this is going to come out as soon as we start talking about the details because you guys showed the location of this Russian drone facility. Something that I'm sure people are going to want to know is why? That's to a degree military targeting information. How do you balance the value of showing off the incredible work you guys did with maybe withholding some type of information that could be better used for the military later? What's the process there?
Yeah, I mean, look, we are, most of Molfar is a commercial organization. We work for fee-paying customers. But there is a part of the organization, a part of our capability that is ring-fenced for work that's in the public interest, in the interest of Ukraine's defense against the illegal invasion. So basically the way it works is that as our teams are monitoring news and monitoring the constant stream of propaganda coming out of Russia, they will just make a call and sometimes say, look, this is valuable information that should be in the hands of the security services. We can do that investigation. We have a very high degree of capability. And then sometimes we just make a judgment call that this is now information that we should share and that should go to the security services for sort of further assessment.
It's interesting. We're in a new era where that type of stuff is all of a sudden becoming public, and in a weird way, people are expecting it, not recognizing that there's some secrecy, I think, still necessary for any force around the world. But looking at this one particularly, the video that I saw come out about the Shahid factory and all of that was on July 20th. On July 25th, you guys put out this article explaining, we found it, which means you found it and wrote this whole thing up in less than 5 days. Can you talk through how that process began and what this started to look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really nice case. I'm glad we're talking about it because on one hand, I think it's a really great illustration of the kind of painstaking work that goes in behind the scenes, behind some of the sort of more flashy or the more sort of high profile stuff we see in the war. But it also is a really great illustration of the capability that the Molfar team has, both sort of from a technical ability and a tenacity one. It's a pretty crazy brief in a way to say, here is a propaganda video produced by the Russians that has just a few glimpses of the building and the location. And then, as you say, in this incredibly short time frame, in the space of the world's largest country, to use that to identify a location. So it's a really great illustration of how the combination of OSINT, open source intelligence, and GeoInt works, because they go hand in hand. And they start from the premise that there are no smoking guns, there are no decisive single clues. And rather it's a matter of painstaking detective work, of layering up a body of evidence to then get you to that ultimate answer. And what was so great about this particular case is it was just the smallest of clues that were left in this propaganda video that were able to dramatically shorten the time needed to get to the answer. So we knew from the video, we saw from the video just some glimpses of some trees, and we saw a very brief glimpse of a UAV that had a bottle strapped to it. And those were the two clues that enabled us to dramatically reduce the area that we then actually had to go searching for this, essentially a needle in a haystack. The trees we were able to identify as a type of birch that we knew grew in some parts of Russia, but not in others. So that immediately, you're perhaps reducing the search area to an area the size of the US rather than the size of Russia. The second clue was the water bottle, and it was on screen for literally a couple of frames. But by freezing and zooming in to that frame, they could identify the manufacturer or the producer of that brand of water, a brand called Sinizhskaya. You can then cross-reference that with open source information from Sinizhskaya's own website as to where they are distributed. And again, there's no reason that a water bottle can't travel around the country.
Mm.
But once you identify that Sinizhskaya is sold primarily in the area around Moscow, that gives our investigators a good lead to say, well, look, let's take an educated guess here. The overlap of where those trees grows, the overlap of Sinizhskaya's main distribution means that we can reduce our search area to this bit, and we're now looking for, say, a needle in a hay bale rather than a needle in a haystack.
But every one of those, if I can jump in real quick,
sure.
Every one of those things takes a lot of thought process, and you're looking at that to figure out that little water bottle. It was not advertised at the beginning of the video. Somebody had to watch that entire video and at some point say, we might be able to see something from that water bottle. So there is a shocking amount of footage coming out from this conflict every single day. How do you do you have somebody in the team that's like, oh, this one, there might be a few snippets in there we could find valuable information? Or how do you even get to the point of deciding that there's enough here to do something with?
Yeah, I mean, there is a constant process of triage of all that content that's coming out, as you say. Some you would naturally spend more time with. Some's naturally determined to be higher value or higher potential early on. So when you see something like this was a Russian propaganda video inside their main Shahed production and testing facilities. Characteristic 40 minutes of Russians bragging about things that the rest of the civilized world would be deeply ashamed of. But nevertheless, it's footage from within those facilities. That immediately gets earmarked as, look, this is something that we should take a pretty close look at. Luckily for us, that 40 minutes of bragging has the upside that they are characteristically pretty sloppy when it comes to operational security. And just a few frames that we're able to identify of buildings, of that bottle, of those trees, is then enough to actually derive some actionable intelligence.
I want to come back to that sloppiness factor, because in a sense here, you are pointing out their mistakes to them. And it's nice that they make those mistakes, but I do want to come back to that in a second. But to wrap up how you guys identified the location, you've got the tree. Oh, you're looking in a hay bale at this point. Needle in a hay bale. That still sounds awful. So how do you actually get to the point of finding these buildings?
Yeah, I mean, there is a point in any investigation where there's leg work involved. So really the analysis of those clues up front is designed to reduce the amount of brute force effort involved. So we've reduced the searching area, but as you say, it's still a very large area to be looking for a certain configuration of buildings. There's no short answer. There is a mix of, there are some AI-powered tools used in GeoInt where you can input images and it can use public sources and publicly available GIS data to make some estimates as to where it is. It's not at all foolproof, but that's one course of action you have. The second is there are existing databases or proprietary databases of military installations and facilities across Russia that we and others have developed. So we have in other words, we have a whole lot of imagery and mapping of facilities that exist. We just don't know what goes on in them. So this is a way to get inside, so we can start cross-referencing against that database. And then, at the end of the day, it's highly skilled people working quickly to do cross-referencing against a very long list of potential locations.
It sounds mind-numbing. I mean, I'm sure the people that are in this every day, they know what to do, and it would take them a fraction of the time it would take me pulling up Google Earth or something like that. But it seems, I mean, you said grunt work, leg work. That's what comes to mind. It's just kind of grinding through image after image after image.
There is that. But I think another analogy is like playing the piano, right? You and I can, I don't know if you, forgive me if you're a concert pianist, but you and I can go to a piano and hit a key on it, and it makes a sound, the same sound that a professional concert pianist makes. The difference is they know the order in which to hit the different keys and can do it more quickly and more fluently and make something that sounds much better. I think a lot of OSINT is quite similar to that. There's a lot of actions taken within an investigation which are not technically complex per se or technically beyond our ability to understand, but where the skilled practitioners make a difference is their ability to match experience and instinct and intuition to move more quickly through all those different nodes and to process data and triage this sort of long lists of possibilities much more efficiently than we could.
Now, to go back to the first question about why make this information available, because there's undoubtedly, there are investigations going on all day, every day that we never hear about and may not hear about until, in this case, after the war comes to a close or even later. But you guys are kind of a split organization, right? There's Molfar and then there's the Molfar Institute. Can you kind of walk through what the difference is there and who did this investigation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm from Molfar UK, incidentally. So Molfar UK is very focused on employing Molfar Ukraine's sort of unrivaled OSINT intelligence capabilities, but primarily for UK and Western Europe based clients that are looking to work with Ukrainian counterparties, often investors and defense companies, those sorts of organizations. Molfar, the agency in Ukraine itself, it's a commercially focused OSINT intelligence gathering organization that will work for fee-paying customers, anything, from litigation support to background checking, due diligence, that sort of work. The Molfar Institute is slightly separate, and it has some crossover in personnel, and it has some information sharing between the two. But it is focused on not-for-profit customers. So supporting NGOs, supporting other organizations who are pursuing not-for-profit goals. So that will at times involve volunteering for taskings or for initiatives that will support the resistance to the Russian occupation, the Russian invasion. And it also involves capability building with aligned organizations and countries. So Ukraine and Molfar investigators and the Molfar team are really at the forefront of a very fast-moving OSINT conflict. The techniques and the demand for OSINT and various other sorts of intelligence there we go. Are pretty extreme, and the team there is developing a very high level of capability and a very high level of new tools and techniques. The institute exists to also help share that capability. So they'll run training for aligned organizations and aligned countries. That's the basics, not for fee paying and not for profit.
There's a countless numbers of volunteer organizations in Ukraine that no doubt would be would love intelligence gathering, intelligence updates about where they're going. I'm thinking of a friend of mine getting ready. Ryan Hendrickson runs Tip of the Spear landmine removal. Okay. They're getting ready to head back over to Ukraine. Is that the type of organizations that they might work with?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
directly with
Yeah.
NGOs? Okay.
Yeah. They worked with a wide range of NGOs. A good example of people is NGOs that have been involved in raising the profile of Russia's abduction of Ukrainian children
Sure.
and helping to trace both the individuals involved and the victims as well. So that's an NGO that the Institute has been closely involved with helping.
There's been a lot. I'm interested in your thoughts on just the overall OSINT picture within Ukraine, because we often hear how Ukraine is leading the way when it comes to drone warfare. And that's something we can see day in and day out. And it's not surprising because they're the ones having to do this new type of combat day in and day out. But OSINT's been around for a while.
Mm.
And the way you're presenting Molfar sounds like some of the leading experts in OSINT are in Ukraine. Is that the case right now? And what have they been doing differently to kind of get to that point?
I mean, it's hard for me to comment on relative position. I mean, I can
Sure.
sort of observe the very high demand for Molfar capabilities. Seems to me like a fair indication that other people
Mhm.
recognize them as leading. But hard to make it, an apples for apples comparison from my perspective. But what I could say from where that capability has come from, I think what the war has done has triggered an enormous citizen effort. So a lot of people have it within Ukraine and also supporting countries um, have seen contributing to some of because OSINT is also there's a bit of an open door, right? If you have an internet
Mhm.
connection and some idea of what you're looking for, you can make some contribution. So I think there's been a big citizen effort to support in quite an ad hoc way at the beginning. And I think that's essentially created a very large pool of people that then professional organizations at Molfar can draw from. So perhaps the difference um, is basically that you have a much, much larger recruitment
Yeah.
pool so that the 80, 100 or so people that we are choosing from and employing are coming from a much higher base and coming from a much more sort of competitive background where they had highly developed skills already. And so we're able to choose
That's
best of the best from a very
yeah.
large population.
That makes sense. I get that. Okay. So essentially, the idea because Ukraine is a country at war, people that otherwise would have gone off to start businesses or become a university professor or pursue PhDs, they are instead tied in with something to help the war effort. So you're getting better and brighter, in a sense,
Yeah.
into industries you might not otherwise.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Or even as well, that university professor or
Sure.
that, software developer, they can contribute on the side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's unique. So when looking back at the investigation
Mm.
here, you mentioned that Russia made some mistakes. The reason you guys were able to look at this public video, which I also think was a great one for you guys to highlight, because holy cow, that did the rounds on Russian channels. They were so proud of that video.
Right.
They shared that thing left and right. And there's something kind of poetic that the video they shared gave away the location. Um, but how do you figure out that balance of by by telling this story,
Mm.
you have to assume there's someone in Russia that says no water bottles next time, guys, or we got to mask those trees better
Yeah.
next time. How do you walk that line?
Look, it's a case by case judgment call. It's really it's a tricky one. There is a calculation made. There are benefits from keeping it quiet. Not letting your adversary know that you're onto them, not pointing out to them the flaws in their operational security. There are also benefits to the opposite. There are also benefits to pointing out, what we know this thing that you didn't think we know. There are benefits to pointing out that what they thought was a slick and impressive propaganda video was actually quite sloppy in some pretty important ways. And so there will just be a case by case assessment made. Is this the one to use as a little shot across the bows or a little puncturing of their balloon? As to the risk of them getting better, you don't want to be complacent. Obviously, you don't want to help your adversary to improve. But I think we have seen time and time again a pretty slow rate of learning in many ways from the Russians, a pretty low level of professionalism. I suspect that this one instance won't be enough to transform that, because it's not so much a don't show bottles and trees next time. It's a much higher level required. Next time it will be something different that gives them away. And if they're operating from a pretty low base of professionalism and operational security, it's actually a bigger task than it sounds to upgrade to a point where you can continue to churn out this propaganda, but suddenly do it at a much higher level.
It's really interesting because there's so much of an information war at play here. And by pointing out these flaws in what they released, that they were bragging about, that they were showing their entire country and allies abroad, you have to think that this probably adds a little skepticism next time. Like, don't put out the one about the submarine base quite yet. We need to maybe scrub that again, or whatever it might be. The new aircraft coming off the line, let's sit on that for a day. So it probably reduces their ability to share some of this footage. I would think, maybe.
Yeah.
But even if it just causes a little hesitation, that's actually something. That's actually pretty important.
Right. I mean, if it just, means they resort to slightly less exciting stories that people are less likely to engage with, if it leads to like a little bit less swagger and confidence on the part of their propagandists, a slightly deflated slightly deflated morale or confidence amongst any parties on their side, then there's real value to that.
It's awesome. Well, James, I got fortunate about a year ago to talk with Artem there at Molfar, and he ran us through a story about unmasking Senej, which was a crazy story that you guys did. And now you've got this, figuring out the location of the drone facility. So I'm rolling the dice asking this of an intelligence intelligence company, but is there anything else you guys are working on that we can look forward to coming out here sometime soon?
Probably would draw the line at telling you in advance. there are a lot of
fair enough. It was worth a shot. I didn't know. Maybe there's something like being written right now, and we can get excited about it. But yeah,
there's plenty going on.
Okay.
My work is predominantly commercial, which I'm afraid will be much less exciting for you and most of your subscribers. But we are busy, rapidly growing. The Institute is also rapidly growing in profile and reach. There's a lot more underway, and I'm sure there will be some more exciting stories to share in pretty short order.
A random aside here, James, that when I think, and this is maybe my fault, but when I think of commercial work like you're doing, it's monitoring other businesses or the market. But there's been so much Russian interference and Chinese interference in commercial industry in the West. Is that something you guys are spending time on?
Yes, with some limits. I mean, it's very client driven. So a client will come to us, knowing our capability and with a specific request. But some of those, a fairly common theme is understanding the true owners of an organization or the true controllers of an organization. And this is something that it actually affects even businesses within Ukraine, that in some instances that a Western company might want to work with. There is still a need at times to look very carefully at who are the owners or the controllers or the shareholders or even past affiliations of that organization. And that does spill across borders. So we have looked at, for example, probably been not named countries, but let's say Western European countries that have businesses operating in them, and determined that some of the key individuals within that business are in fact sanctioned Russian organizations or sanctioned Russian individuals who are operating under a new skin or a new identity or, a maiden name rather than a married name or something like that. And in that way, managing to evade sanctions. We have been able to identify that and lead our customers to, either our customers to make a decision not to engage with them, or for those businesses, if they were unaware, to take the appropriate corrective action.
Makes sense. I hadn't thought about that. There's so many different organizations sanctioned that you wouldn't, yeah. And I'm sure they don't, nobody has on their website, right? Be careful, just so you know, we're sanctioned by the U.S. government, so know that going in.
Yeah, people don't realize just how fast the sanction sort of ecosystem moves. It's not like they get sanctioned and stay the way they were. They rapidly reinvent themselves, wrap themselves in new holding companies and new geographies, and it's a real it's a big effort for people to keep on top of that.
Believe it. Well, that'll keep Molfar busy, I imagine, for a while.
Yes.
James, thank you so much for taking the time to walk through all of this. Really impressive work that you and the team have been able to put together here.
It's my pleasure. Great to talk to you, Preston, and I hope we speak again soon. Keep up the good work.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
So thank you again so much to James and the team at Molfar for taking the time to walk through that investigation. I am constantly blown away at just how capable open source investigators are. Like, again, this is all publicly available information, and they look at a water bottle, a couple trees in the background, and Google Earth, and all of a sudden we have the exact 10-digit coordinate to where some of these drones are being launched from, or where the guys in the video are standing while being recorded. It's wild. It's so impressive that people are able to do all of that. But again, if interested in learning more about Molfar or the Molfar Institute, be sure to check out the links in the description below. That's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.